Hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. We're just going to give it a minute or two to give everyone a chance to join the webinar, and then we'll get started. Hi everyone, thank you for joining the webinar today. We'll just give it one more minute, give everyone a chance to join the webinar, and then we'll get started. Right, I think we can get started now. So I just want to say welcome to everyone to the Green Match Fund. With congratulations for being awarded match funding for the Green Match Fund. I'm really pleased that you're joining us for this campaign. We are hoping that it's a really successful campaign for you and a great advert for your charities. On the call today, we have Lindsay from the FSI, who's we've worked with for a number of years now. They always do great advice and help for charities and deliver great webinar content for charities and help them plan for our campaigns. My name is Sahil. I am the partnerships manager at the Big Give, so I manage the relationships with our charities along with Bethany, who's also on the call webinar today. She's our partnerships executive, so I'm sure most of you will have spoken to one or both of us at some point. So just going to go over some quick housekeeping. So throughout the webinar, you will all be on mute. So if you have any questions for the Q&A portion at the end of the webinar, please put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom panel. And if you want to introduce yourself to any of the other attendees and do a bit of networking, please use the chat function on the right-hand side of your Zoom panel, and please just make sure that it is set to two hosts and panelists. Everyone can see what you're writing. We also will be recording the webinar, so if you have to drop off the webinar at any point, don't worry, we have all of this recorded and we will be putting it on our YouTube channel. And finally, if anyone's hard of hearing, there is the transcription service, again, at the bottom of your Zoom panel. So if you need any subtitles, please do click on that and that should be enabled for you. So the webinar will be about 1 hour, 15 minutes, and we'll leave some time at the end for any questions. Please do, if any questions pop up, please do put them in the Q&A box as we go along, so we can sort of collate them just in case there are a lot of quick questions, we can all collate them and then make that part of the session as efficient and as useful as possible. But without any further ado, I'll hand over to Lindsay to get us underway.
Cheers, Sahil. Hi, morning, everyone. Afternoon, it's 12. That has gone very quickly. How are you doing? Hope you're all well today. So yeah, we're together for an hour and a half today to talk about planning and preparing your Green Match Fund campaign. Some of you may have done the campaign before. Some of you might have done Christmas challenge. Some of you might have done other challenges. Some of you might be brand new to this. We're going to start from the total beginning to give you all of the steps you need, but it's also going to be a brilliant refresher for those of you who have run things before. More than anything, it's a chance to step back and think about, for your campaign, what's going to give you the most success, and crucially, what's going to feel achievable. I know we're all stretched, we're all tired, and we've all got lots to do. So today we're really going to concentrate on coming away with a really achievable but ambitious plan that's going to work for your organization. Lovely to see some of you introducing yourself in the chat. Hello, hello. We've got a question already from Janet. Anyone else working in Tanzania, do say hi if you are. Connect with Janet. A little bit of introduction. My name's Lindsay. As Sahil said, I'm head of programs at FSI, and we specifically support small charities across the UK through fundraising, impact measurement, governance, strategy, etc. So do see if there's more we can support you with. We often work with the Big Give throughout the year. Fab. So what are we going to cover today? Got 90 minutes together, quite a lot to cover. I'm going to share with you some key steps to think about when putting your campaign together. So how to go from, these big ideas, all the things we could do, into a really tangible plan. And there's some specific things we're going to focus on today. Who are your audiences? So who are you targeting with this? What's your message? How are you going to compel them to give? And how are you going to get that message to those people? So those are the steps we're going to focus on today, and then bringing it all together into plans and top tips about resourcing and setting actions, etc. We've peppered it throughout with lots of case studies from previous big participants, because we know it's always brilliant to hear from the organizations who've done it before, what worked for them, what they learned. And I want to build in plenty of time for Q&A. So as Sahar said, there's a Q&A box that's separate to the chat. So if you've got questions that you want to make sure I can see at the end of the webinar to be answered, put them in the Q&A box, because if it goes into the chat, oftentimes that will just fly by and I'll never find your question again. So pop it in Q&A. A little reminder of the campaign. It launched on the 22nd of April and runs till the 29th of April. You've got those specific dates to get your donations in to be matched. You've got lots of resources in the dashboard. There's the marketing toolkit. If you haven't looked at that already, highly recommend checking that out. Lots of really nice case studies. And a lot of this today is repeated in there with some kind of action points for you to help you with your planning. April isn't that far away. So now is the time to definitely get your planning going underway if you haven't already. You'll come away hopefully today with the skeleton of your plan. Make sure you block out some time and bring the other people in who need to be involved to get it all ready to launch then. You're going to have your donations matched by your champion funds until they used up all the campaign ends, whichever one comes first. If you don't reach your target, but whatever you do raise will be matched still. You can also exceed your target. So big give, I often find, especially for organizations, maybe this is the first time you've done a big fundraising campaign like this, or maybe you're reaching out to a new audience. It's a great opportunity to really build momentum. So even if you hit your target, you can keep pushing it, celebrating that win and topping it up, even if it's not matched. Okay. So let's kick off then, talking about planning your campaign. So these are the 5 key elements I always think about when I'm planning any campaign, really. Objectives. What do you want to achieve? And it might seem really obvious, we want to raise loads of money, but there might be other objectives as well. So we'll dive into that in a minute. People, who are you talking to? Who's going to help you achieve those objectives? Proposition, what's your message? Proposition is just a jargony way of saying that. And promotional channels, what's the best way to get that message to them? And planning, getting it into the detail. What do you actually have to do and when, and who's going to do it? I highly advise. In my former pre-FSI life, I was a fundraiser in small charities, and we did the Big Give Christmas challenge. And my biggest learning year one was to plan as much in advance as possible, including drafting all my thank you emails, also having things prepared if you hit the target, if you don't hit the target, if you exceed the target, and crucially, your post-campaign plan as well. So what are you going to do afterwards? Don't let that momentum die down. Okay, so those are the steps we're going to follow today. So step 1 then, objectives. As I said, there's a pretty clear objective for most of us here. You want to raise some funds for what you're doing, but you might have some other objectives. You might have some other pieces around kind of raising your profile, or perhaps tapping into a new type of donor, or converting. Perhaps you had some people come along to events or start volunteering. You want to convert them into donors for the first time. Perhaps you want to educate people in your cause or raise awareness of an issue. So you might have some other things. Perhaps it's also getting them signing up to a newsletter so you can turn them into longer term donors. Highly recommend thinking about objectives as SMART objectives. You might have seen that acronym before. So specific, defining what you want to achieve in as specific terms as possible. So you don't want your target to just be, your objective to just be to raise money. It's to raise X amount of money through this campaign, through match donations. So how can you hone it down? Measurable will help you do that as well. So something you can really quantify, or you can tick, yes, that's been achieved. if your objective is just to launch a campaign, does that mean once we put it on the website, is that launched? Is it once it's gone out to email, or is it once we've hit our target? So really hone in what can conclusively say, yes, we have demonstrably, measurably achieved that. So it might be how much you want to raise. It might be how many new supporters you want to engage. Converting last year's donors, proportion of them into repeat donors. Perhaps you might have some post-campaign targets too. Maybe how many people who donated to the Green Match Fund do you want to get them onto your monthly giving afterwards? So think a bit broader, think a bit creatively. These campaigns are a brilliant opportunity to launch other types of giving and more strategic objectives. The A is for actionable. So you should be able to identify something really clear, some really clear actions to deliver this objective. So really hone in, it should feel really real and tangible. Realistic, you want to be ambitious, but we've also got to be realistic. And we've heard lots of different people approach this in different ways over the years. Some people use the challenge as an opportunity to really stretch. Some people play it safe based on what they already know. So find the right balance for where you're at the moment that's realistic, but still ambitious. And time bound. So you've naturally got a limited time period due to how the challenge works. This is really helpful for creating a sense of kind of urgency for your donors to give now to get it matched. A couple of top tips for setting your objectives. Define it in terms of the results, not the process. So rather than your objective isn't to email 3,000 people on your database, your objective might be to secure 50 donations from your database. Do you see the difference? One of those is a task, one of those is a result. Think as well about what success will really look like and define that as specifically as possible. You could do that by concrete numbers, so 50 new supporters or 10 new monthly givers, or by percentages, so that 20% of people donate again, or 50% of people open the campaign email and things like that. As you go through the rest of the webinar and you're thinking afterwards, you might end up coming back to these objectives and revising them as you've thought through, you know, exactly who your audience is. You might think of new audiences and add new objectives as well. So question for you here, what are your objectives for the campaign? This is a chance just to work on your own. I'm going to give you 3 minutes or so to have a think about that. What might your objectives be for the campaign? You've probably got one in mind already. You've set a target already. But what other objectives might there be, and can you make them smart? So 3 minutes just to think that through on your own. And if you're up for it, do feel free to share some in the chat as examples. It'd be great to hear what you're thinking. Awesome, so I'm coming through, thank you. So get 20 new friends, so those are regular monthly supporters as part of the campaign. Fab, not sure if it's too ambitious. You'll know your supporter base better. I think it seems reasonable depending on where you're starting from. And it's really helpful to have that noted down as an objective, because that might change your comms. That might change the way you follow up with people as well. We've got another suggestion, raise £5,000 online, £10 from 50 new donors and £25 from previous donors. Yeah, great. So you've broken those down and you've got different audiences there. I really like that. 2.5K in 1 week to get the match funding, 10 new donors, 50 donations. Fab. Yeah, so great examples there. I'll give you 1 more minute to wrap up your thoughts if you haven't already. Has anyone got any broader objectives for their campaign, do you think? One of the examples that we're going to look at later from Earthworks and Albans, one of their objectives was obviously raising funds, but also they had a really prominent one, which was to raise their profile, because normally they do lots of drop-ins and open days, but during the pandemic, they weren't able to do that. So they really felt they'd lost touch with that in terms of raising a profile in the local community. So they had some objectives around, you know, really engaging the wider community and measuring how many people came to the website, how many people signed up to the newsletter, etc. Oh, nice one. Yes, and press objectives here. 3 good pieces of media coverage, including online broadcast media. Excellent. Yes. So that's a really nice measurable way of seeing increased awareness and profile. Grand. Okay, what are we doing with this actionable? And that's going to shape the way that you deliver your campaign. Fab, and just another example coming through. A great one, increase e-newsletter mailing list by 50. I'm a big fan of e-newsletters as a way of, if you're doing lots of your communications currently through social media, for instance, you don't have as much kind of control over that relationship. Once you get someone onto a newsletter, they're much more likely to stick with you for life, and you can hopefully turn them into donors for in the longer term. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. Step 2 then, we're thinking about people. So who are our audiences for this campaign? And again, you've probably got some in mind, maybe people who donated before, maybe people that you know support your cause, but I encourage you to think a bit creatively and maybe start to segment them. So you don't want to necessarily just have all supporters in the same boat. You saw in the objective section, people are already starting to segment them. You might differentiate by, you know, current supporters, people who already donate, but they would really like the idea of doubling their donation. So you might have different messaging there where you're acknowledging their past support and you're going to frame your ask at a similar level to what they currently give. So if they give you £10 a month currently, you might ask for a similar amount, or even the cumulative of that over a year or something. Whereas someone who gives £500 a year, you'll ask at a higher level. You might segment by the gift level. So by what you think they'll give. You might have a campaign that goes just by email to most people asking for 20, 30, £50, and more targeted approach to higher value, kind of higher gift donors who might be giving £100, £200. And perhaps those you do one-on-ones or letters. You could segment by current versus lapsed donors. That's a really good segment to think about. A campaign like this is a great opportunity to reinvigorate some relationships that have maybe dropped off over the last few years, perhaps obviously depending on your GDPR policies and your data collection, whether you still can, but reconnecting with people who have supported before and aren't any longer. You might have another segment that is people who haven't donated at all before, but have shown some type of engagement or support. Maybe they've come along to an event, they follow you on social media, they're on your newsletter, they volunteer, you might have volunteers as a group. So your messaging, again, is going to look differently depending on their existing relationship with us. Don't forget also, can go beyond individuals. So you might have corporate supporters. They could do something like a dress down day or a bake sale and donate through the campaign. It could be some community partners. Perhaps you have relationships with the local WI or Rotary Club or churches or faith organizations who might be able to participate. Whatever categories that you do use, make sure you don't go too deep and don't go too complex depending on your resources, because you want to make sure that people are only in one category. So you need to make sure you can segment so people aren't getting multiple different messages from different segments. So you might have, for instance, a volunteer who's donated in the past. Understand enough about your data to make sure how can we actually realistically segment this, and depending where you're at in terms of your past experience fundraising, your database, you might just do a current supporters, lapsed supporters, or not supported before split. So think about what's going to work for you. Also go back to your objectives to think, okay, what do we need to, if you've got an objective around getting new donors, you're going to spend more energy on reaching out to the public through press or through ads, etc., that you might not otherwise. Oh, sorry, is it breaking up a little bit? Thanks for the flag, Carrie. Let me switch to my backup data. Let me see if I can do something. We'll see how it goes. Give me a wave if it's still not working. Thank you.
Yeah, we at the moment I think it's okay now. We'll let you know if it picks up again.
Thank you very much. Cool. Okay. I've got a little case study from Pumpage, who took part in the challenge last year. I really like their approach to thinking about their different audiences. So they focus first of all on their warmest networks. So warm networks, we mean by the people who are already known and engaged in some way. And in general, in fundraising, that's a good rule of thumb. Start with the people that are already engaged rather than completely cold networks. So they went out to their corporate partners. And in fact, they went out to their corporate partners for feedback before the campaign launched, which I thought was a really good idea of getting buy-in before it's even launched. And they got some feedback on the messaging to make sure it landed with that audience. I've done that before with a fundraising campaign where I asked, it was a high-level volunteer who gave a reasonable sum each year, but it was for a major donor campaign. And I just asked for a coffee to run the materials past because she was very much the target audience. And she gave me A, really helpful feedback on the messaging, and B, was asked to come on as the lead donor for it. So if you've got relationships like that, that's a really nice way of building some loyalty, building some relationships. And Pumpade, they said they found that really motivating to get that feedback before it had even launched, and to get some of those kind of people saying that, yes, we'll give. They had a beer company offer a donation for every sale. So again, it looked really different to what they might have thought was going to come up beforehand. They wrote directly to their past donors in advance of the campaign, thanking them again for their donation last year, highlighting the difference it had made, and asking them to save the date for the campaign. And they mentioned it in their newsletter to all of their followers. So again, they were thinking in advance, giving them a heads up, and going to their warmest networks first with targeted messaging. But they also did spend some good time on reaching new people. So social media was really successful for them. They found images worked really well and great stories. They built some relationships with charitable radio and got some coverage that way. They put out press releases to get press coverage. And they also went out to some high profile individuals on social media. So they have an ambassador that they connected with, asked them to share the messages, and they contacted other people on social media to spread the word. So a moment again for you guys to think about your organization. Who are your people? Who are your different audiences? You might have some ideas already. You might want to take this back to your team, to your trustees, to your volunteers, and do a bit of what we call network mapping. It's almost like a spider diagram of all of the different networks. I like doing it by different types of audience. So you might have corporates in one bubble, donors, community groups, volunteers. So who do you already know in those boxes, and who do you want to know? And where are all those fingers leading out and all those spiders webs? You know far more people in your networks than you might picture. So 3-4 minutes to have a think for your organization. Who are your key audiences for your campaign? So just working on your own for that. And again, if you've got some examples, please pop them in the chat. It'd be great to see. Perhaps some ideas starting to come through in the chat. Schools who fundraised for you in the past or that you've connected with by providing educational resources. Brilliant. So that's a really nice warm network. They get what you do. They've seen the value for themselves. Excellent idea, Louise. Key audiences, friends, volunteers, people who come into the shop, eco shop, to get their refills. Don't usually ask them to donate, but it could be a great way to let them know about the projects that go on behind the shop. Yes, I love that idea. Yeah, so think about what's the messaging that's really going to connect with them. I'm assuming if they are taking the time to go to an eco shop, they really care about the eco messaging. So you can do some really fun creative comms, and you can just have conversations as well. That word of mouth is going to have ripple effects. Fab, thank you. Some more ideas coming through. Patrons, volunteers, e-news subscribers. Yeah, like the idea of schools and youth groups too. Yeah, so get a bit creative, thinking about who do you already know. It could also be a bit broader than, it doesn't have to be networks you've got through your current projects. It could be past networks. It could be, networks of partners and friends. Who do you know? Who could you spread the word? Who do your trustees know, really importantly? Could you craft an email or a flyer or a text even for them to send to their network, get them to spread the word on your behalf? I bet they know lots of people. Local businesses, past donors, CCF volunteers and supports, network organizers. So yeah, those involved in the projects you're fundraising for. Yeah, your service users as well, if that's appropriate and relevant. Brilliant. Give you another minute to note down your thinking on your audiences. Ooh, great idea from Matt. Local elected representatives. Yeah. So do you know any influencers? Influencers has got a bit of a bad rep. We think Love Island, but actually, I think it's really something worth thinking about. Who are the people that can really raise your voice? So it could be people of note in your local community, mayors, councillors, community leaders, people you're connected with that way. Could be, if you're national or international, you might have, or you work in a very specific issue, there might be social media influencers you could connect with who work in that field, but they might have 40,000 followers and could actually spread your messaging if you create some really good content and relationships. Ask them to share it. Nice, thanks everyone. Good ideas. Okay. The next stage then is telling your story. So this is obviously a huge topic. We'd run a whole day training course on this, but for the purposes of this, the key elements that I want you to think about are really taking a step back from the way you talk about your work day to day, because you and your team and your volunteers and probably your partners, families, friends already know what the organization does. And it's really difficult to imagine not knowing it and not being moved and excited and passionate about it. So I'm going to need you to take a step back and think about the so what question. Why does this matter? Take out the jargon and really focus on the impact, so the change that you're going to create. You can focus either on kind of solving a problem or an exciting vision, inspiring people of the future. You can do both as well. I like the format just to get you started thinking about need plus solution. So what is the need for your work? What's the thing you're trying to solve? And what's your solution? What are you going to do about it? And that is your impact. So what difference is that going to make? Really focusing on that. And in my experience, we spend a lot of time talking about the solution and the details of, exactly, we're going to run 10 workshops for 100 people covering XYZ, and we'll make flyers and handouts on this. But actually the impact is that piece that's going to really connect with people. So always asking that question, why does this matter? So what? And why now? If you haven't seen it before, Garfield Weston produced a report in 2020 on prioritizing our planet, which really highlighted the need for environmental charities in particular to improve their storytelling. It's something that can feel really abstract, but is actually, you and I all know that's why we're here. It's so important, but you need to make it a way that will connect with people and inspire public action. It's also worth thinking about, and I can see some of these ideas coming through in the nature of what you guys do, how these connect with wider issues. Is it issues of social inequality? Is it issues that are in the news right now? How do we recognize the intersections of that? And can you connect with different people in different ways? So again, going back to your audiences, another way you might segment is by the different angles. Use this as an opportunity to test different messaging. You might have some diehard environmentalist supporters who really want to know the ins and outs of your river restoration project or your wildflower meadow. But you might have some people that are just members of the local community and love the idea of a community space or the educational benefits or the well-being benefits. You might be working internationally and have people that really care about development or care about a particular continent or place or care about family or care about health. You've got lots of different angles that you can share your messaging on. So get a bit creative. I'd highly recommend focusing on specific stories and trying to bring it to life. If you're struggling to get your messaging creatively, it's the first thing I do if I'm feeling a bit stuck, throw away my laptop, not literally, but just close it and go and have a chat with someone who's doing the work day to day, or a service user or beneficiary, and just hear it in their words and just have a conversation. And I guarantee that's going to be far more compelling than anything you've ever written to a funder, which starts, the FSI was founded in 2007 with the mission to da 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 da. How can you really bring it to life? Stories are a really powerful way of doing that. It could be a story of a success that you've had in the past, a case study of someone who's benefited from your service, a particular challenge that someone is facing or a place is facing. How can you really bring that to life? And can you use images, videos, quotes, etc. to do the same? With all of your messaging, you want to really focus on the ethics of your messaging as well. So particularly, there's been lots of conversation around international development. If you're working internationally, making sure that your messaging isn't reinforcing unhelpful narratives. You're conscious of the power dynamics. You're not kind of going for savior messaging, and your messaging is empowering for the people you work with, but that goes for everyone. So would you be happy for your child or your cousin or your friend to be portrayed the way that you're telling someone's story? Ask that question to yourself throughout and make sure you're getting genuine, meaningful consent if you are telling people's story. Highlight the match funding. We know that match funding motivates people to give. There's lots of evidence on it. I think it was Global Witness, so one of the challenge winners 2020, saw a huge increase in donations compared to their normal appeals. And they put lots of it down to that match funding element. We know it's really, really motivating for people. And my final tip, which I kind of started with, test your messaging with others and invite some honest feedback. So run it past friends or family or people who don't know your work, who might be interested a bit, but aren't going to know it in and out like you will. Get that honest feedback. Does it resonate with them? Does it land? Are they inspired? And remember that the average reading age in the UK is apparently around 9 years old. So again, take out that jargon, keep it simple, let your passion shine through, especially if you're a smaller charity. You've got a real benefit here of really connecting with the stories on a day-to-day basis. So let that passion and real voice shine through. Case study from Dig Deep Africa. One of the things that I really liked about their approach was that they worked with their in-country team to determine the messaging. So it wasn't just the organization in the UK deciding what was most important. They had a workshop and a conversation to decide which project to focus on, and then to come up with some more accessible language for it. So they focused on some of their hygiene and water projects, and they came up with the messaging: clean hands and a safe toilet for everyone. So the first draft, I think, was very technical about we will buy X number of specific types of toilet, but think about what's really going to resonate. They were really conscious of putting people at the heart of the campaign. So all of their photos were of the community and people who would benefit. They included some recommendations from their partners and funders to kind of back it up, to tell the story, to see it, build that confidence and trust. One of the things I thought was really interesting, I've not seen this done that much before, was that they did some really nice interviews with the project team. So the in-country team who would actually be delivering the work, they kind of introduced them, did a little interview and campaign, and it's quite interesting reading. It's a different angle, voices that we don't often hear from. They did tailor all of their comms to different segments. They did different kind of donor journeys, which is something you might want to think about depending on your capacity. So not just what your initial ask is, but actually what's the different stages. I think they had 3 or 4 different emails over the campaign, like a launch, like a save the date, a launch, a reminder, and a thank you that was tailored to different segments. They had a really good open rate, 42%. Again, I really think the campaigns are a great opportunity to raise funds, but also to test and step your fundraising up a gear. I know if you've not got a huge fundraising team, we don't have time throughout the year usually to A/B test everything, where you try different subject lines, for instance, or different from names. Use this as a chance to have a play and to test and to use that learning to build more sustainable fundraising in the future as well. And they found that celebrating success throughout really worked. The posts focusing and featuring the community and the team members had definitely the highest engagement, alongside posts that were celebrating successes. So they had kind of images of totalizers, how well we're doing, progress towards the target. And all of this worked because they ended up smashing their target by 11% more. Yep, Kerry, exactly. One person, part-time comms and fundraising team. Exactly. Very familiar with that. So all of this needs to be down to your capacity and thinking about what's realistic for your organization. So my top tips for that: definitely plan as much in advance as possible and think about what is most important. So pick the objectives that are most important to you, and to create that culture of learning and reflection. So don't view this just as a one-off thing. This is going to be part of a process of gradual improvement and growth over time for your project. So use this as a chance. Okay, so it's your turn. Over to you. Here's some prompts to think about it. What is the need for your project? What are you going to do to solve it? And what impact is that going to have? So have a play with that. Can you pull these things together into a snappy message? And if you get through that in time, can you think of some other ways to bring that to life? So some stories, some quotes, videos, etc. I'm a big fan of videos that don't even need to be very shiny looking, just done on your mobile phone, especially if you're working internationally and you can't bring people to your service to see it in action. How can you bring that to life? Okay, so I'm going to give you a good 10 minutes to have a start on that. And again, would love to hear some examples in the chat box when you're ready. Do drop me a message in the box as well if you're getting stuck and you want to work through an example together. That's always a good thing to do as well. So give me a wave if you're stuck. Welcome, Ellie. First day in a new role at charity, struggling to come up with an example. Okay, so when you applied for the job, you must have had an idea of what they do and why they do it. So when you explain to your friends or family that, oh, I've got this new job, it's working for this charity, what did you say? Why did you say it was important to you, or why you were excited about it? You've got a really good opportunity here as a
I think Lindsay may just be breaking up a little, so hopefully she'll be back with us soon.
advice. If you were just talking to someone at a dinner.
Hey, Lindsay.
You hear me all right?
Yeah, I don't
Okay.
know if it may be helpful, maybe if you turn off the video, if that helps with the sort of connection. I think that'd be okay. Try that.
Yeah, good idea. How frustrating. 2 years in. Cool. So Ellie, I don't know if I broke up when I was saying that. It would be great to hear when you got the job, or when you were applying for the job, what was it that excited you? What motivated you? Or when you told your friends about this new exciting job, are you saying to them about why it's important, why it matters? In the meantime, we've got some examples coming through. Cam's Repair Cafe Network. Fab. Things break, repair cafes help fix them. I like that as an opening statement. I would just leave that as a full stop. That's a really nice capturing thing. Pairing skilled volunteer repairers with people who need things filled, preventing useful goods from going to landfill, tackling climate change, and building community. Yeah, really nice. So you've got the need, you've got the solution, you've got the impact of that. Have you got any examples, Alana, of how you could really bring that to life? Or you must have some great images of befores and afters, but also, why that matters, why building. And also, I'd really like to know more about building community. I think that would be really motivating to people. Fab, some examples coming through. Thanks, everyone. Jenny, thousands of tons of edible quality food is wasted each year. That's your need. Yep. Aiming to combat food waste while getting it to those in the UK that may otherwise go hungry. Your solution. By supporting our Green Match Fund campaign, you'll save food and carbon from waste while helping break the cycle of poverty. Yeah, lovely. That's your impact. And I love what you've done there is you've put you at the heart of it. That's another really good tip from Jenny, and for general fundraising there. Focus on the experience of the reader, of the donor. So put the you at the heart of it. So not just what we as an organization do or what your staff do, how they can be part of that. You're giving them an opportunity to change the world, to make a difference through their donation. Another example here. So you're excellent. I like these ones coming through. Fabs at need. Want to do something about climate change, but not sure how you can make a difference. Solution, fund our woodland wizard and be part of a county-wide push to increase tree coverage in our county to at least 20% by 2060, working with local people to get involved and learn new skills. Fab, and you brought that together. I mean, I really like that need and solution combo. I actually really like the idea of having that kind of question as an arresting way of grabbing someone's attention. If you're scrolling through Twitter or Instagram or your emails, what's going to make you open the email? A subject line like that, want to do something about climate change, but not sure how. That would get me to open it. Or perhaps you could start with an unusual fact or a story or a quote that could really, gather people's attention. Alyssa, how about floods in Malawi have left farmers struggling to feed their families? Donating to Tayoni means we can support them to buy the equipment they need. Double your donation with a big give and help a farmer with this year's harvest. Lovely. Any feedback from anyone in the chats, by the way, go for it. If any of these examples that you're hearing or seeing in the chat really resonate with you, give them a thumbs up, let them know in the chat. Or if you've got any suggestions for making some of them more compelling, go for it. Help a farmer with this year's harvest. Really nice. Morven, all aboard, inspiring future ocean advocates. Help us sail to remote island schools and inspire the next generation to save our seas. Oh my goodness, I love the idea of that. I'm not entirely sure what you do from that, but I really like all aboard. And what I like about that is we don't have to, a lot of us in small charities might have excellent Alana's on board. A lot of us, most of our fundraising experience might be like writing funding bids. And oftentimes that's quite formal language, or you need to make sure you hit all of the outputs, outcomes, bits and bobs. But with this, you can get a bit creative and also let the tone and voice of your organization shine through. So don't be afraid to, use some humor, use some more informal language, all aboard, use some, the real voice of your organization. And if you can do that through the voice of the people you help or a volunteer or something, instead of, the staff members or the organization volunteers who run it day to day, all the better. Okay, so you literally have a sailboat that goes onto the sea. Oh, fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Any other examples that anyone wants to share, or any one that you want to get feedback on? Did anyone get stuck on any of it? Great question, Alana. What do you think about facts and figures as part of the need? Facts and figures have a place. I would say that typically they're not as compelling as we would like to think. So unless they're truly shocking or surprising, or you do a really good job of kind of giving the context for them, I would say focusing on stories is going to be more compelling, but it can certainly be part of your more detailed messaging. I think, yeah, used carefully, they can be impactful, that aren't actually that compelling, but others don't. So you might know it's shocking that only 10%. Oh, sorry, I'll switch my backup internet. So sorry, everyone. This hasn't happened before. Hopefully that's a bit better. Is that okay? Let me know in the chat.
Yep. With us.
Is that all right, so? Okay, good. Thanks, everyone. Sorry about that. How frustrating at this point. So we're talking facts and figures. Yeah, the other thing I would think about with that is, again, test it with people. Like, do they actually resonate? Like the example that was given earlier about increased tree coverage to 20%. I don't know, CAMS, that area, or wherever you are, I don't know what is good or not good tree coverage. So that to me probably isn't that compelling. Whereas the, working with local people to get involved and learn new skills, or maybe you could go into more about the benefits of tree coverage, and you know, feel free to, again, get a bit creative and maybe try some drafts that don't make it to the final thing. So what does it mean to you to be standing or to live in a place with more trees? What is that like, walking from the station home with trees, without trees? Or that's a kind of for some of those senses.
Briefly lost you again there, Lindsay.
Oh dear, I'm on my backup internet.
Cool, yeah, you're back with us now.
Okay. Thanks everyone for your patience. I appreciate it.
No worries.
Cool. Thanks, Imogen, for jumping in. Yeah, difference between solution and impact. So yeah, exactly right, Imogen. Solution is what your organization is going to do, and the impact is how that helps, what difference that makes. United, sorry, I didn't have to say a name, has got a question here for feedback on your one. So feel free to jump in the chat box if you're with us today, and I'll have a read of it now as well. So the need: climate change has caused soil erosion, erratic rainfall, drought, and frequent pest attacks affecting small farmers with less than 2 acres of land. Solution: with educating and training on organic fertilizers and pesticides, sustainable farming, and water-saving irrigation techniques, they'll get one step closer to improving soil health and crop quality. Impact: your donations will help farmers harvest quality produce and sustain their livelihood. Yeah, very clear to me. The impact bit is the most compelling bit. Go back to some of these tips of, I would take out some of the jargon. So I did do geography, geography. So I know what soil erosion, care about it, erratic rainfall, and answer that second question. Why does this matter? Why now? So really bring it to life. Have you got a story perhaps of one of the farmers that you worked with who was able to improve their produce and sustain their livelihood? And what does that mean to sustain their livelihood better? So you could either go smaller and focus in on this individual farmers' lives. You could also go bigger and say, you know, how about helping just one farmer at a time is going to make a difference on that global scale. What would other people say about that example? Any feedback? Oh, good. I'll read one more example and then we'll shuffle onwards. But this is something you're going to want to play around with. But I really do go back to this last recommendation of testing your messaging and really stepping out of how you normally write it. Do not, well, I can't dictate what you do and don't do, but I would do not copy and paste from your big give application or your latest funding application into your newsletter and social media. Because that's not necessary. Some great feedback coming through. Thanks, everyone.
Oops, are you still there?
I am.
Yeah, okay, great. Yeah, I think we had another jump.
Oh no, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll persevere.
Yeah, I think you were just on the point about not copying from your their application or their latest fundraising application. They're not copying any sort of details in that too much.
Yeah, so start from a blank piece of paper and start from, if you were meeting someone at a dinner party, how would you introduce it? How would you get them to care about what you do rather than copying and pasting? Oh, so Lauren, yes, sorry, I might have jumped across that. So I was saying don't copy and paste from your application, because you've probably written that in your fairly standard, you know, the FSI is a charity that was founded in 2007 and aims to support small charities through training, messaging. Whereas the way you talk about it to your friends, neighbors, is going to be far more compelling. So start there, start with the need, solution, and impact, start with the stories. Grand. Let's keep going, internet permitting. So sorry. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Okay, so the next element of your plan, you've understood who your audiences are, and you've thought about what your message is to get to them that's going to persuade them. Promotional channels, we're thinking about how we get that message to those people. So some things to think about. Start about where your audience already are. So start with the people, your different segments. Where are they already engaging with you? Don't reinvent the wheel. Maybe it's customers, so you've got them in the shop. Have you got flyers? Have you got your staff trained to chat to them? People coming along to an event.
Oh no.
Volunteers. Have you got people on your e-newsletter? So think about where each audience.
Sorry, Lindsay, would you be able to just repeat that? I think we just cut you out Sorry, cut you out again.
Yeah, so sorry. I'm gonna try and see if I can move slightly. Yeah. I've had a good run of it to use the pandemic for this to not happen too much before, sorry. So we were talking promotional channels, and my top tips are to think about where people already are. So where are they already engaging with you? If they're in your shop buying your products, coming to the eco shop, train up your people on the till to chat through it, put some flyers out, maybe print some little cards that go in their paper bag, I'm presuming. If they're coming along to an event, have you got things they can take away from the event? Are you going to do a little talk about it in the weeks leading up to the campaign? Is it their newsletter subscribers so you can take over the newsletter? And again, think back to your audiences, what you know about them, what message is going to connect with them, tailor it as much as you're able. So again, all of this will depend on your capacity, but you want to, if people have donated before, reference that and thank them before you make the next ask. And think about, again, also your objectives. So what are your objectives with this and what's your messaging? So thinking not just before and during the campaign, but afterwards as well, how will you go about converting them from this donation into monthly donors, for instance? So some of the most common channels that you're going to use, your website is always going to be the kind of starting point. It's got that key information, and make sure you've got prominent info about the challenge on your homepage and in your support us section. You might not have a support us section on your website, but I'd highly recommend it. If you don't have a donate or support us button in your main menu, very simple thing to add, and you might be surprised how many just organic donations you get. Keep it updated and keep some stories on there as well, but you'll also want to think through who your audience is there, who's coming to your website. Email is going to be a really important part of your campaign. It's usually rated as the most successful channel for marketing from previous challenge participants. So think about your several targeted emails in advance. Think about what that journey is. You don't want to overload people, but it's reasonable to be sending 3 or 4, an announcement, a launch, an update, and a thank you, perhaps. Direct mail, and by that we mean just things in the post. So sending letters out or flyers out, envelopes, stamped up envelopes. You might have some audience segments who engage much better by mail. You want to think about the best way to get them back online to make their donation. It could be a QR code, now that those have surprisingly come back into fashion over the last 2 years, or a personalized link. And make sure you get it out in plenty of time. So you're probably going to want to be sending those out this week to make sure they get back in time for the campaign to launch. Social media, you've got Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. Make sure at the very least there's some content about the campaign on all of those, because you never know who will be there. But you want to think about who engages with you on each of those platforms. You might have more volunteers on Facebook and more corporates on LinkedIn and more sector people on Twitter, for instance. So think about what your messaging is for each of those audiences and make it really shareable. We know that images and videos are far more shared on those platforms, nearly all of them. So use those to your advantage. Events, you might have events that you've got scheduled already, whether it's a drop-in, whether it's a beach clean, whether it's a fundraising event, a gala. Build that up, build a donation ask in there. You can also do virtual events. I've seen, obviously the flurry of big virtual events has mostly gone now, but I'm still seeing some really nice examples of successful virtual events. I've seen some people launch their impact report recently as a virtual event with some talks from staff and service users. It was really enjoyable. Or you could do like a lecture series. I've been going to quite a few of those still, or online shows as well, even though I can get to in-person things now if I choose to. I'm still going to some. Oh, how strange. Some people can hear me, some people can't. Oh
I
dear.
don't think that's an issue on your end, Lindsay.
Okay.
Not, but we'll
How
work through
strange.
it and try and find a solution for them.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, don't worry, you will get the slides afterwards as well, and the recording, and I'll do my best to make sure I've covered everything. Don't forget the value of personal approaches as well. So this is just making a call or a one-to-one reach out to someone. Particularly larger gifts could just be a coffee or a lunch, or it could be a phone call or a Zoom call. This is also not just about the giving. This is about relationship building, and especially where if you've got capacity to build those really meaningful connections, will reap rewards in the long run. And this doesn't have to be just you. Get other people on board, get your trustees involved on this as well. And press and PR, we've heard a few examples of this before. Press can be a really good way to reach new supporters, particularly if you work in a local community, local press, local radio, get your word out there that way. You could look at sector press. So if there is a specific area that you work in, will people be motivated to support from there? Do your research early, though, because they might have specific copy deadlines. Perhaps they only publish fortnightly. And with press releases, there's lots of great guidance out online on how to write compelling ones, but you've got to make it really easy for them. So you lead with a story, make it really exciting. Oh, a brilliant example in the chat. Congratulations, Rachel. Approach a major donor. He's matching half the target. So you now only have to find just over £1,000. Huge target as you've never gone crowdfunding still, but brilliant. A perfect example of if you don't ask, you don't get. I know it's a scary thing. It was the biggest thing for me when I started fundraising, was overcoming that fear of making the ask. But once you do it a couple of times, and once you realize it's not going in there with a big presentation and a pitch, it really is relationship building. You're not going with a begging bowl. You're not asking them, to take pity and donate. You are giving someone who cares about something similar to you an opportunity to make a real difference. They can't do it on their own. Their money just sitting in their bank account does nothing to support the changes that you make. You've got the skills, the expertise, the networks, the impact. You're giving them an opportunity. And that really changed my perspective. And I started finding it really enjoyable to kind of galvanize this network of people who all want to make a difference. A case study from Earthworks St Albans, which I mentioned earlier, because they had an objective to raise £1,000, but also to raise their profile because they hadn't been able to do their normal community engagement during the pandemic. So they did lots of different things. They used it as the opportunity to start a newsletter. They're a very small organization. They didn't have one before, but they used this as the chance to do it, a real impetus moment to do that. They used their website, social media, made phone calls to donors. Again, really nice way of connecting with people. Email, they did a local leaflet drop. So just printed some simple leaflets and put them through local businesses and doors. Oh, what do you mean subtitles? Sorry. Oh, have you got the closed captioning on? Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm reading out the image, so hopefully that can help you. I'm not able to actually move it on here, I don't think.
You can, if you
there it is.
Yeah, you can also
you can turn them off yourself as well.
You can drag and drop the subtitles to different parts of your screen as well.
Excellent. Thanks for flagging that, Carrie. There you go. And they also, as I said, started their newsletter. Some of their lessons that I thought were really interesting was that they got really positive feedback from the community. So through that leaflet drop, through reaching out to people, that buzz that we've all probably missed over the last 2 years of really connecting and hearing new voices and getting that positive feedback, that was really motivating to them. So it's worth it even beyond the money. They did exceed their target. They did get new donors and new subscribers to the newsletter. And one of their things that they're going to think about differently next year is that they only posted once on LinkedIn, but that actually got quite a good level of engagement. And so in future, they want to invest a bit more time on that to engage potential corporate supporters on there. So over to you once more to have just a couple of minutes to think about what channels you might use for your campaign. Go back to the notes you took on your people. Where do you already communicate with them, and where might you find them? So just a few minutes on your own. Reminder, if you've got questions, pop them in the Q&A box because I might miss them in the chat box. And I can see there's a couple have come through, but I'm going to save them for the Q&A. Brilliant. Some ideas starting to come through in the chat. Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, fab. Using this as an opportunity to give your current regular givers some care and a bit of an update. Your appeal is going to be based around expanding. So you're sending them a postal letter with thanks for their support and update and the opportunity to help expand our current work. Really like that framing, because what you're tapping into there is you've got the thank you. I hope you're thanking them throughout the year as well, but you've got that recognition of their support in the journey so far, and you're inviting them to be part of the next step. Target social media ads in the Devon and Cornwall area. Brilliant idea. Again, you're really thinking there about who your audiences are and where you might find them. So yeah, targeted ads, they can be tricky to get right, but they can really reap rewards and you can learn a lot from having a go. So think about where your audience will be. Are they in specific community groups? Are they able to connect through community networks or Facebook groups? Are they following certain people on social media? Great example. Thanks, Jenny. Any other ideas or questions on channels? Just another minute or so to get your notes down on who your audiences might be. Depending on your learning style, I really like basically turning those different headings into a table, and that's my campaign plan. So I've got my audiences, my messages, and again, you might tailor your messages to each audience and your channel, and then you can add another column that's just the actions that come out of that, which we'll look at in a second. Great, some more ideas coming through. Yep, Dickie, getting stakeholders to amplify the campaign on their channels. Fab. So really making it as easy as possible for them to do that. So that might be creating, shareable images, writing draft tweets, writing draft newsletter content to make it as easy as possible. Brilliant. Okay, our final stage then, and thank you so much for your patience again, everyone, with my internet, is planning. So pull this all together into something that's going to feel actually doable. I know we're all super busy. Lots of us are doing a campaign alongside lots of other bits of our job. So my top tips, having done this as the sole fundraiser for a few years in a small charity, is to do as much as you can in advance. So email templates, thank you letters, thank you emails, social media assets. You can use tools like Canva. You can get Canva for nonprofits to create some quite nice looking social media assets. It also might be something you could get a volunteer on board to do. Might be cutting it a bit fine this year, but you never know. You might also have someone in a corporate partner who could help you out with that. I used to have an amazing volunteer from a corporate. The corporate gave us donation, but this volunteer didn't really want to come along and get involved in the day-to-day work, but she loved proofreading, so she would proofread my funding bids. So worth getting creative about, is there anyone who can help you out with some of this creation? Plan out your timeline and key deadlines. So working from backwards from the campaign to now, what are you going to launch when? And to do that, when do you need the content created and signed off? So when do you need to start? Working backwards. Start earlier than you think you need to. So you're getting it's getting close now. So you've got enough time, but come away from today, write down your plan. Don't forget as well to think about your stewardship. So what happens after the campaign as well, because that is, in my experience, where you are exhausted. Thank goodness we did it, or shame we didn't quite get there, but we learned a lot. And then you might forget to do that piece, which is what's going to help you achieve those longer term objectives. I can't remember the statistic, but it's something like 7 times more cost effective to retain an existing donor than to secure a new donor. So use this as an opportunity to secure and retain those donors. Spend a bit of time sorting your data and systems. So if you're thinking about segmenting your data, make sure you put some time in to do that in advance. You might have a database, you might just have MailChimp, you might have an Excel list. So go with what's actually achievable for your organization. Don't forget as well to look at the data you might have forgotten about. So I quite often see charities who you might have, just giving goes straight into the bank account and no one ever looks at it. But that's a really rich data source of people who want to support you. So sort your data out in advance. Also checking in on your data permissions, etc. Of course, how you can actually contact people. Assign tasks to different people. It's going to be a lot if it's all on one person. So depending on your organization, you might have colleagues who can support with different bits. You might have volunteers who can help. Definitely get your trustees on board, at the very least, giving feedback and spreading the word. They might also be able to make phone calls or have coffees with donors as well. Think a bit creatively as well about people's skill sets. You might have a volunteer coordinator who's amazing at motivating people and getting to know what inspires them. Those are really good fundraising skills. So can you translate that somehow? And definitely put in a bit of time for reviewing and debriefing. Make sure you give yourself that time to take a deep breath and a stretch once you've done it all, once it's over. But don't then just wait until this point next year to actually reflect on this year's campaign. So put a meeting in the diary for the 30th of April or however you can after the training, after the campaign, to reflect on it, to analyze, did we hit our objectives? What worked, what didn't? What will we do in future? How can we leverage this year? Okay. So I'm going to wrap up with some top tips and then we're bang on time for plenty of Q&A. So do invest some time in planning for your Green Match Challenge. As I said before, it's one of those things that spending time up front definitely pays off in the long run. Make the most of all of your networks. So you can do that network mapping activity, like I said, literally on like flip chart paper with post-it notes, or you can do it on Jamboard, which is a free online tool that looks like an online flip chart. Get people on board, maybe tag it on to the end of if you've got a trustee meeting coming up. A lot of you have them at the end of March. Could you do 15 minutes on network mapping together? Do test and develop your message. Make sure it does resonate with people, especially those who don't know your work inside out. Make sure it's a clear call to action in all of your messages, so it's really easy for donors to give. So it's such a shame when I see amazing social media posts that really tell a great story, or a newsletter, but then don't have the donate button, or it's really difficult to find it. So make sure that clear call to action is really easy to use. Thank every single donor. I know that feels like a lot of work, but that stat that I gave earlier, much easier to cost effective to retain an existing donor than get new ones. The basic thing you need to do is thank all those donors. That's how the bare minimum to retain them. I can't remember the stat again, but it's one of the top 3 reasons why people don't give again, is because they weren't thanked before, or they didn't know the difference their donation made. So why would you give again? Think about how to measure the success of your campaign. So do spend that time on those objectives, and what information are you going to need to gather to know if you've done that? So how are you going to find out if you've got 3 pieces of press coverage? How are you going to track who's a new donor versus a returning donor? And do build in some time to celebrate with your team. You know, it's a really difficult time. It's a difficult time for fundraising. We've all been in like firefighting mode, and a lot of you might have done emergency fundraising campaigns. We're at a moment where you can hopefully stick your head above the, what's the metaphor? Look up a little bit, look up to the sky, and use this to generate some buzz and some learning for the future. So those are my top tips. I can see some questions have come through already. Parapet, thanks, Gary. Yeah, plenty of time for questions.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. That's really great. And yeah, we do have questions. So myself and Beth have been collating questions. I think Kerry had one, she had 2 actually. So we'll go on to the first one is, if you do a physical event, would you put cash in your account and then put it into the big give account? So yeah, we can answer that one. So if you are doing a fundraising event, you can collate the cash together, and then someone from your charity can make that donation from a personal account. Obviously, they can't then click on that donation because it's from multiple different people. But if you are doing a sort of fundraising event with cash, that's how you can sort of donate those proceeds to your Green Match Fund campaign. I had another one from Kerry, which was just from Lindsay. Do you know if messages like, if every adult in Stroud gave X amount of pounds, works at all? Do those sort of messages have an impact?
Yeah.
I don't know of any specific research on it, but my gut instinct and what I've seen is that I would focus more on the individual, because that's going to potentially kind of dilute the ask a bit and maybe dilute the responsibility they'll feel. So you want to focus on really what their specific donation can do. And you might be able to give that tangibly, you know, that £10 could buy this, but often we're not able to do that, or you don't want to restrict it to that. But you want to focus on their role in the change. But very good question.
Beth, do you have any questions that you picked up on?
Yeah, we had one question about, do we have the option to raise funds in rupees for our farmers from India? I think this kind of goes off of what Sahil recently said. It's important to remember the payment methods for your Big Give campaign. All donations need to come through your Big Give campaign page via debit, credit card, Apple Pay or Google Pay. So you can accept those donations, but the donation needs to be made, can't be from the charity directly. So it could be from someone in the charity who makes a donation from their personal account, or however that donation is made. But yeah, we could accept that.
Yeah, and we can accept donations from all over the world, from outside the UK. So the donation will be made in pounds sterling, and then the donor would be charged at the exchange rate of their bank account. So it depends on what that is. The donation itself will be made in pounds sterling.
We had another question as well, for Lindsay actually. Can you recommend some good, easily accessible video editing platforms for editing short campaign videos?
Oh, great question. I don't know any off the top of my head, but the place I would look is Charity Digital. They're the go-to people. There's also Digital Candle, can connect you with one-to-one advice on digital things like that. So I'd check out Charity Digital, Digital Candle, and maybe Charity Comms or Media Trust as well. I'll pop those names in the box so you've got them.
Yeah, we have worked with Digital Candle before, so yeah, we can recommend them. I think there was a question about, can the charity contact their match funder So for the vast majority of charities taking part, especially if when you receive the offer, you saw the champion funder as the big give champion. So it's not just one champion funder which is funding your campaign. It's a collection of different funders which have been put into a pool, and then the big give have sort of assigned all of the champion funds to charity. So it's not just one champion funder that will be supporting your campaign. So you can just put the big give champion in any comms that you have as the match fund for your campaign. If the organization has an environmental and a social element to its work, how much time would you recommend focusing on each messaging for this campaign? Lindsay, do you have any advice here?
Good question. Unfortunately, there's definitely no right answer or hard and fast answer. It will depend on your audience, your messaging, and I would also say testing. So thinking about, do you know why they followed you in the first place? Was it for environmental reasons or was it for social reasons? If you have any information like that, or could make an educated guess, you could split it that way. But I would also, if you have the capacity, use this as a chance to test those two different messages, put both on social media and see which gets the most engagement, or do two different versions of a newsletter or email. If you're able to do that, test and learn. I would say in general, even your environmental messages, you want it to have some tangible element. So it might not be human, it might be animal, or it might be even a plant or something, but just really focus it in on, like, again, those stories. So something that is going to, climate change is so broad, or soil erosion is so broad. What does that actually look like, mean for specifics, if that helps? So whichever way you lean, bring it down to the why does this matter question. So yes or no, easy answer.
Do you have any other questions that you want to pick up on?
Yeah, there's just one question. I know there's a lot of smaller charities here, smaller teams. Do you recommend only focusing on maybe 2 or 3 promotional channels rather than the full list that you showed earlier?
Yes, great question. Yes, definitely focus on doing a few things well rather than everything less well. I would think about just making sure you've got a checklist of all of the different channels you do currently have, and just putting at least one message on each, so that people, if they're coming, if you're doing this big campaign and it's all over Facebook, but then you go to the website and it's not on there, it looks a bit strange, or you might lose people on the journey. But definitely focus on doing a few well than all of them. And again, focus on where your audience already are. But also don't be afraid to try something new. If you've never done a press release before, this might be a chance to see if you get any traction.
We would also say that from like the Google Analytics data, we have a lot. Email is still the biggest driver of donations because of that, as Lindsay was saying, of that sort of more personal element. So definitely make sure that is probably one that you do focus on. Out of all the different channels, that's still definitely probably the strongest one we've seen across all the campaigns that we've run.
Yeah, I agree.
In setting the objectives, who should be involved in that? Is there a risk of having too many people from across the organization being involved in, like, maybe setting meeting objectives? Do you have any advice there?
Ooh, I like that question. Again, it will totally depend on your organization, but I do think it's worth involving a couple of new voices beyond the person delivering the campaign, partly because you want their input, but also because you want their buy-in to understand why this is worth it, and also to make sure that builds in the long term. It doesn't have to be super complicated. I think most of you, or we saw some great examples that you did just in like 3 minutes today. So it doesn't need to be a team away day to do it. But the way I often work is to suggest some and ask for feedback and ask if you've missed anything. But I'd probably get them involved more in thinking through what that actually means and looks like. Hopefully the objectives are relatively straightforward to pull together. Yeah, as your starting point. And thanks everyone for, there's some nice tips in the chat box about video editing, etc. Check those out.
Yeah, there are some really good tips there. There's a question that's just come in about how important is a banner page on the campaign page. So this charity, they have an issue with their trading name is different to their official name. So they have their logo as the banner image, so it looks pretty dull. Well, I think we could go, maybe Beth can also chime in here. I say if you don't want to put your logo, maybe you have a really nice image that you can put instead, just an image on its own. That really can work really well. But I don't know, Beth, if you want to also chime in here.
Yeah, I kind of just follow up on what you said. You don't have to put your logo there. I know a lot of charities use Canva, and you could make a really quick, easy design and have that as your logo. I think it's useful to have a banner. We don't have any reports on whether campaigns that have a really amazing banner work better than others, but I think just, you know, to keep people engaged with your campaign page, if you have your photos and videos that you can use in that as well, would be really useful. So definitely have a look at your banner and see what you can do.
I think those are all the questions I can see at the moment, but I don't know if Beth, there are any others that you have picked up on, but I can't see any more.
You know this area.
I can't see any more in the Q&A either, but it might be worth just going through what happens on the big give side in terms of campaigns. So for example, will donations in excess of the target be matched? Maybe Sahil, you wanna?
Yeah, so if you hit your target before the campaign ends, firstly, congratulations, that does happen. So donations in excess of your target will not be matched, but you can still accept donations in excess of your target. Our terms and conditions already cover that any donations in excess of the campaign target can be used for unrestricted purposes. So they don't have to be spent on that campaign. So there's that sort of incentive if you still want to carry on receiving donations if you already hit your target before the campaign ends.
And maybe just a quick one for Lindsay. Do you recommend a certain time when charities should start sharing the campaign on their socials or on their emails?
Yes, we always get asked this. I think I recommend definitely doing one like in advance email, like giving people a heads up, but again, tailor it to different audiences. So you might have one that's for people who donated last year, because some people really get attached to the big give as like a moment in the calendar. So do one in advance, and then I would do a launch on the day, an update during the week, and kind of wrap up at the end. But again, depending on your capacity, you might tailor that if you're able to, you know, not send more asks during the week to people who have donated. If you've got the ability to do that on your system to cross-reference those, that would be helpful. But yes, I would do your initial save the date no more than 2 weeks in advance, really. You don't want to kind of lose the momentum. But again, build it around what you've already got. So if you've got a newsletter going out, makes sense to put it in there. Or if you've got a volunteer update or a trustee meeting or something, don't create extra work for yourself.
There was a question that has come in now that will we be sharing these slides after the webinar. So yes, we will share the recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel, and we'll put the slides as a PDF in the resources available for the new campaign dashboard. Beth, is there anything else you'd like to go over for charities?
Nope, I don't think so. I just think for general, do have a look at your charity portal if you haven't already. There are lots of resources there for you, including a marketing guidebook, which is a bit more detailed breakdown of what we've discussed today. Also, you can access some social media assets and all other kind of resources, as well as your donor data, and just have a look around your campaign dashboard. And of course, if you have any questions, do pop us an email and we're happy to help out.
Yeah, we're always happy to have a call back with charities if you want to bounce any ideas off us or talk through anything. So do give us an email if you find yourself in that position. But I just want to say thank you to Lindsay for taking us on this journey today and giving us all her helpful advice and tips today. It's been really useful, always learn something new in these webinars. And thank you everyone for joining us today and actually making a really interactive session and giving us all your great examples. We really love hearing from you and like what you're thinking and how you're thinking of promoting your campaign. So yeah, I hope everyone has a great rest of the week, and yeah, we'll speak to you soon. Bye.
Thanks everyone, take care.